ask them a lot of questions, and sometimes I think I might pepper them with too many questions. But it's going to be different for every business, and it's really geared towards figuring out what do you do, how do you do it, and how does your money move when you're doing what you do. Because as you grow, you should grow the services of the bank that you utilize, and the bank has different levels. We have just a branch where you can go in as you're doing small business less than 100,000. You get over 250, you're doing up to 250 to 5 million, you need a different level of banking. 5 million and up, you need a different level of banking. 30 million and up, you need a different level of banking. And within the bank, there's different divisions that work with different types of investors, individuals, businesses. My job is to funnel you to those right areas. And so I've got a lot of experience in talking through those dynamics with you. So I'll leave it at that, because I don't talk products, so I like to figure out what your business does. But I'll give you some tidbits as we go through the question and answer session today. Thank you.
Sure.
Ma'am, you mentioned that you are born of a veteran, you're married to a veteran. Can you give us a little bit of your academic background in terms of where you come from and why you decided to go this route as opposed to some other areas that you could have gone into? Why is that? Could you tell us a little bit more about you so we can understand who you really are as it relates to just being a financial advisor?
Certainly. So my background is in electrical engineering, and I spent several years as a regional sales director for Hewlett-Packard. And I had a goal when I first started at Hewlett-Packard, which was to retire before I turned 40. And I hit that goal way before I turned 40. But when I hit that goal, I looked around, and although I was hanging out and I was traveling, I was doing it alone. All of my friends were still working. And I thought to myself, what did I do so different than what they did? Because we all started out with about the same incomes, and the men were making much more than we were making just because they were men. And so, but they also were still working. So I thought to myself, I said, okay, well, let me buy myself some time, so to speak. And so I decided to go to graduate school and to get my master's. And so I went to Harvard, and I got my master's at Harvard. And when I came out of Harvard, those same friends and the same colleagues were still doing the exact same thing. Nothing had changed. So I had been gone for 2 years, and absolutely nothing had changed. Some hadn't gotten promoted, some they were just basically in the same position they had been when I left. So I decided to start a nonprofit organization teaching financial literacy to youth. And the name of my nonprofit was FATE. It's Finance, Art, Technology, and Engineering. I decided to marry the bridge of who I was, which is an electrical engineer, with the knowledge that I gained at Harvard with the finance piece. And I'm also an author of children's books, so I decided to bridge the relationship between all of who I was and do that. And so in my practice of teaching financial literacy, I came across several parents who began to say to me, you need to do this for adults. And the conversation with adults is always a tough conversation, because when potential clients come to me, by the time they get to me, they have made choices that if they knew what they knew now, I'm certain that they would do it again differently. And so they wanted me to be able to again have conversations with adults, and I wasn't willing to do it initially. Merrill had to spend about 24 months trying to get me to come on board. And the reason why I was very reluctant to work with adults is because once we have made what I like to say are choices that we would do differently, we become comfortable with those choices, we become comfortable with the lifestyle and the image of those choices, and we don't want to make the necessary adjustments in the short term to be able to actually live in the image that we're actually portraying. financially securely. And so in my practice, I work predominantly with veterans and affluent women to build generational wealth and sustainable wealth for that population. It may surprise you to know that last year women made $18 trillion, but we are only 20% of the market. And so I want to change that. When I started at Merrill, I initially said that I wanted to have an all-female client base. They told me it had never been done. And so, of course, that has been more of a motivator to make it happen. Because I know that we are brilliant. I know that we do have money. And the only reason why we're not in the market is not because we're not brilliant. It's not because we don't have money. Is because oftentimes the people that we're sitting across the table from in the finance industry are men. And no offense, but they can be what we perceive, and I do say what we perceive as being condescending. And so we typically shy away from the finance industry in that regard. Any more questions? Yeah.
Since GBI is really focused on creating a manufacturing consortium, and of course we want the intellect of everyone involved, how may we attract more women into this space, given that we know that the recruiting of females coming into our science and engineering fields at such a young age is very lacking, if I may say, as well as minorities in general, or should I say, or black kids. Okay, so what's your take on that from your engineering?
For my engineering, take off my Merrill hat. So it's the same answer that you have in any male-dominated field. If you want to attract more women, you have to put more women in positions of leadership in your own organization before we will find you appealing. Because we want to see the opportunity for growth. And we want to, and if what you're presenting to us is an all-male leadership organization, you're walking in with a glass ceiling, and what our thoughts are, how are we going to break that glass ceiling? So if you want to attract us, you have to put people in place on your staff that look like us. It doesn't work from a bottom up, it works from a top down.
I know I'm not a woman, but I was going to share an opinion on that. You know, while I was working on my master's, I remember studying organizations or companies really that were geared towards women. And sometime later, I ran across a story. I think I was listening to NPR, and they were talking about Forever 21, which I don't think they sell anything to men. I've never been in one. But at one point, their entire board was all men.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't make sense to me to have an entire board of people selling female products and not a single member of the board is a woman. But to what Bridget just said, I really believe that if you want to include any group, doesn't matter if it's women, minorities, veterans, whatever it may be, you have to bring people from that group into your organization and make it very visible that you welcome that group and include them. And to me, leadership, as Bridget said, is really the way to do it. Couple more questions.
I heard you mention, as I was walking in, you were talking about representation. If I ask you in Merrill Lynch right now, what is your highest level of aspiration and inspirational models in that company?
What is mine?
What are? In other words, what is the senior ranking how far from the top or at the top are there minorities both of gender and ethnicity?
That's a good question.
So within Merrill Lynch, on the Merrill side, because our marriage again is still, relatively new, and so I'll let Michael speak about the Bank of America side. But on the Merrill side, we do have minority women that are at the VP level, but they have typically taken more of the marketing path or the HR path. We do have what we call top producers, our vice presidents on the finance side, but they are client interfacing. And so in banking, the VP title doesn't translate to be the same as it does in corporate America. So for us, the VP title comes with time service and assets under management. And so, but more than assets under management, it's time and service. So we do have, I'm trying to think off the top of my head in terms of the numbers. I don't want to, I think I probably shouldn't give a number, but it's not enough. And Merrill Lynch is committed to increasing their presence in the minority communities. We have a diversity fund, and so we are making strides in that area. Although I, came on board with Merrill Lynch, I was recruited also by some of the top firms, on Wall Street. And I chose Merrill because I really believe that they are passionate about changing the perception of Merrill. I believe that they are passionate about attracting more women. And so all of those things were important to me. And one of the questions that I get asked a lot, is what are people investing in now? What should I do with my money? And, right now, you should be investing in the earth, earth-type products, water. All across the world, water is still a necessity. And, when I think about companies like Coca-Cola, who owns Dasani Water, who also pays great dividends, you should be investing, your money in water. I heard someone say, I don't like to follow the trends, but in the world of finance, following the trends can be where you make your money. And so one of the hottest trends, and we've all kind of alluded to it being in the STEM space, but you have to look at chips. Everything that I don't know if any of you have recently received in the mail your new chip encoded ATM banking card. Companies that manufacture chips are a great place to be investing your money. Right now, clients, prospective clients, people like you and I, there seems to be an increase in our disposable income. And what do when you have an increase in your disposable income? You eat out more. You travel more. You spend more. So, the airline industries, the transportation industry, the restaurant industry are also great places, right now that people are spending their money. And the other thing that's happening is there's an influx of online shopping. So with an influx of online shopping, there's an increased need for what? For security. So data storage, online security firms, those are also great places to be putting your money. Do we have any other questions?
What do you see from a financial standpoint on either mistakes being made or something you would advise people that, like myself, are involved in multiple businesses, multiple projects? What's just like something you've either seen habitually repeated as a mistake or something that you would always give out advice for?
From a business perspective, most of the time when I sit with a client, we're talking about their business. The biggest errors I see are in two areas. One is in cash flow management. And what I mean by that is, I'll talk to somebody who's importing wires, true story, who's importing maybe Apple cables or wires from China and selling them here to a grocery store chain, or a department store chain. And I'll ask them, well, when you pay your manufacturers in China, how long does it take to get here, and what's that process like? And we'll do the math, and we'll find out that it takes, from the day they spend money, 60, 90 days before the products are here and they're selling them, they're on the shelves. Okay, well, how long does it take for you to get paid? Oh, I don't know, we just get paid and we start doing the math. And really it's in shortening that cycle, right? Your money comes out on this date, when do you get paid? And the objective that I try to set for them is how tight can we get that? I mean, in a perfect world, you would spend money after you sold your product. And every now and then I have a client who's in that situation, where they collect their money up front, and then they go spend and purchase what they need to do. But most of my clients are spending money and have no real way to track or are not very knowledgeable on what's the average in the industry. Are your competitors doing it in 30 days when you're taking 60? What's your uncollected funds, your bad debt? Are you at 15%, 20%, where you have to say, geez, I'm letting that go, that company's owed me for 150 days. And are your competitors your 5% or 1%? What's standard for your industry? And a lot of times those are the questions we try to get dealt with my clients. And I would say that's the biggest area. The second one is simple, which is, get an accountant, get a CPA. Oftentimes I say to somebody, hey, we're a bank, you want 250 grand, 300,000, sure, we'll give it to you. Let me get a P&L, balance sheet, income statement. Oh, it'll take me 60 days, I gotta talk to this guy, I don't have somebody. Do you know anybody? I'll find out they've been in business for 6, 7 years, they're doing 2, 3, 4 million a year, but they've never taken the time to really figure out their, an accountant or a CPA. So.
And so on the individual side, managing assets, the biggest mistakes that I see people make is similar to what Michael said as far as cash flow is concerned, but spending more cash flow than they actually have. The largest mistake that I see is people just don't know what they're spending. I had a client the other day come into my office and I asked her, how much do you think that you spend eating out? And what I challenged her to do the month before she came in was to bring me all of her receipts. And she said, oh, I spend a lot. I spend about $300 eating out. She actually spends $1,300 a month eating out. And she had no idea. And she's not the norm. And so one of the biggest mistakes that I see people do is, number one, they try to fix themselves. So in this industry, people like to pay an expert for almost everything that we do. We pay an expert to get our hair cut. We pay an expert to get our nails done. We pay an expert for the option to have an expert in the event that we might get sick. And the very thing that we utilize to pay all of those experts is our money. But when it comes to our money, we want to do it ourselves. And what I try to get my clients to realize is that I don't need you to fix it before you bring it to me. You don't do your hair before you go to the hairdresser. You don't cut your hair before you go to the barber. For women, we don't paint our nails before we go to the nail salon. So don't try to fix your finances before you bring them to me. Let us help you get on the path to fixing them. And it's that, thing that it's the conversation sometimes that we're embarrassed to have because the image that we've created in the community says that we have a lot of money and we have a lot of wealth, when the reality is what's going on behind closed doors is we didn't pay the mortgage last month because we didn't have enough food to eat. And so the message that I try to convey to the millennials is investing early pays off, and to the baby boomers, it's never too late to start. No matter where you are, if it seems like it's impossible, you should get started right away. Yes, I had a question.
What I would like to know is a little bit of information regarding the programs that you have, because there are a lot of manufacturers that are here. In helping the manufacturers in accessing international markets and providing the necessary financing and infrastructure in order to go after those markets with the product that they'll be manufacturing here.
So, I know initially we talked about, Bank of America as a bank. I've worked for a couple different banks. I worked for several Fortune 500 companies. Bank of America is a very unique bank. You'll talk to guys from other banks, and I always leave banks to remain nameless. And really, they operate within the borders of the United States. But Bank of America Merrill Lynch, we actually, and I say that exactly as I mean it. I don't mean Bank of America, I don't mean Merrill Lynch, I mean Bank of America Merrill Lynch. We operate globally. So we will, have guys literally sitting in China, sitting in India. So you'll have a company that's a manufacturer that's getting supplies from a different country who needs to maybe ship them over here, and there's a letter of credit or something needed. We can help with those challenges. And we help set all those processes in place, and we help work with those clients. And if they hire people in those countries, or they need accounts where multiple people in the organization are accessing it from different parts of the globe, we try to make sure that happens for them.
Does Bank of America have any type of formal education to teach manufacturers about export trading and the like? And actually working with them to set up that infrastructure internally so that they'll be able to manage and operate?
I don't think we have well, that's not true. As our clients need services, we do have formal training we put them through. When I work with a client, I educate them on the things they need to know for our level. But as they get larger, or as they need more complicated business needs, I connect them with other members of my team who put them there. And a part of that process is to educate them, because we give them access to different systems. And we can't just dump you in there. We have to say, okay, we're going to give you access to this, and we'll set up a couple webinars. And then, the client will sit for a half hour to an hour, depending on what they need to learn. And then we'll have a team of people that are at their disposal, depending on the size of the business. So for some of our larger clients, as you grow, you'll have not just myself as a guy out in the field and touching people. I also have somebody who will sit in the back office with a couple other folks who work with them to analyze financials and to make sure that your simple question that you might not know how it translates, we figure it out on our side to really deliver the whole package.
So we have two questions from the back. They've been waiting. Sir in the gray.
So my question to you as an advisor and you as a banking official who's married now, what are the trends for the currency with the dollar depreciating in value, and how does that affect the new currency that the International Monetary Fund has put in place regarding bitcoins and digital currency? And how does that play into the global vision that Merrill and BOA, meaning Bank of America, has as it relates to the new trends of currencies?
So I'm going to give you a loaded answer, because I'll say I don't think that Bank of America has equipped me to answer that question intelligently. What I can say, based on my independence, knowledge, digital currency, and my understanding of financial structures and markets, I think it would be very challenging for any non-government-based currency to be successful on a global scale. Because I know Bitcoin, based on my reading in the newspapers, has had challenges in countries that just choose to make it not possible to spend in their country, to give it a value.
Right, the only reason why it has some problems is because it's not been regulated by the government. It's
The government
unregulated.
doesn't have control over a currency,
Right.
and also the power to protect the currency.
Right.
I remember hearing a story, Bitcoin had some hackers that stole, I don't know how many 100 million from some company.
Right.
If that happens to the dollar, if that happens to the yen or some other digital currency that's being protected and managed by governments, they will go after that individual. For digital currency, If it happens, what happens? Who goes after them? Who punishes them? Where's their military to back it up? Where's the organization to back it up? So I think that, is not going to be a worry. Part of the reason the dollar has been strong historically, or the German francs, or the British pound, is because they do have the legitimacy, the infrastructure, the governments that are trusted. So, I don't know if you trust to convert all of your money currently to Bitcoin and hope that it's around 10 years from now.
No, I actually trust my advisor.
And there you go. I would stick to, financial advisors and keeping your money in spaces with the Bank of America Merrill Lynch's of the world. Because, if you're going to put it in Bitcoin, I say you could put it under your mattress and be just as safe. So.
Sir, you had a question?
Yeah, for B of A. One of your competitors is really active in the business community with matching funds for startups, financing different type of training programs. And that particular competitor is making a lot of inroads into small business that I don't see B of A even reaching out to. And I'm pretty sure you know what competitor I'm talking about.
Please elaborate, we want to know.
Wells Fargo. Their community outreach programs, their support of different veteran programs. The VA has startup capital, which, and some programs that Wells has now do matching funds. Because for small businesses, the capitalization part is essential to actually make payroll, to come up with materials for sustainability. And it seems like, Wells has said this is a good risk, but they're one of the, Chase doesn't, B of A doesn't, other city doesn't really, particularly in California. Wells has outreached significantly to the small business community.
Wow. Okay, so funny enough, I might have had some experience working with said name company for several years. And I did work with a lot of small businesses, as I said in my time in banking. One of the things that I've seen in Bank of America that's different, you won't find in any other bank, is what I call tools to success. So, every bank, for example, has online banking. Bank of America is one of the few banks that has an online banking system that allows for direct payments, for electronic invoicing, little things that a small company might not have thought of is how do you bill somebody? And I had a client ask me that the other day. Hey, I'm a startup business, I'm small, how do I bill somebody? I said, well, sign up for online banking, and we have something called online invoicing, where you can literally, electronic invoicing, you can invoice your client, and then they can pay you directly into your account.
That's not, I'm sorry, I don't mean to
You're
interrupt.
talking about funds.
I'm talking about
I'm
skin in
gonna
the
get
game. Wells Fargo puts its money where its mouth at.
You're talking about lending money in the community.
I'm talking about setting up grant programs to assist with startups as far as the small business community.
Correct. So
I
Bank of
understand
America
that-
does that in
yeah.
a different way. We do have organizations we work with where we actually give them funds to lend to small businesses. So, to be frank, we don't always succeed in that space. Historically, that's not been our bread and butter in terms of what we've gotten smart on, but we do lend to community organizations that do lend to small businesses, and our name's not always on it. And I can actually present you or connect you with some of those organizations. Typically what I do is if I work with a client and we apply for a loan, and for some reason it doesn't work, we don't get married, right? I don't just say, hey, have a nice day. I then connect them with one of these organizations. And that organization will say, hey, what did you discuss with the client? What are they looking for? I present to them, kind of quick snapshot, and I say, hey, here's your package. I give it to the client. Please take this to these guys. Here's who you need to talk to. And then that organization will underwrite the deal and figure out if they can make it work for them. So, some things we're not going to do directly. Again, we play in the space we know. By the time a business grows to sufficient size, what they're going to find is that there's not going to be a lot of banks out there that can give them the quality of complete services that we can. When you're talking about that global stage that I mentioned, the bank you mentioned, I don't think has anything anywhere besides the United States. So at the very beginning, some banks will step up maybe and seem to present more because their name's on it. But as you grow, my question is, what else is being offered to you? You know, what tools do you have for growth? When you talk about training, we have the training, and we train you directly. So I don't know if they're setting up classes or what they're doing different. But a lot of times, the generic training that we give you in a public forum, it doesn't make sense for your business. If you're a manufacturer, you're different from a client of mine who might own 5 or 6 restaurants and bars. You're different from somebody who owns, public relations companies. So the training we're going to give you is going to be tailored to the product specifically that you're going to be needing or using. And it